You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey all, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark, and joining me as always is Hyung and John. So off the top right away for episode 36, I wanted to quickly touch upon this past weekend's NFL divisional round playoffs, which arguably was one of the most exciting football matches we've seen in a long time. But instead of asking you guys about the games, since by the time this episode airs, we'll know the two teams that are going to the Super Bowl, I wanted to ask you instead, out of the 4 remaining QBs left as of this recording, what do you think will happen to their card values if any of them make it to the Super Bowl? So let's start off with the team that's probably favored to win now, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think will happen if he goes back to the Super Bowl?
There is no doubt in my mind that his prices are going to skyrocket again if, he wins another Super Bowl. Like, absolutely. Because we've seen his prices where they were. We've seen the retraction. But then I think this is kind of like that upward plane that you see on, over a year kind of span on that chart, right? So I think the where you have to be careful is these are the peaks that end up because of the news or something like a Super Bowl, right? So I think it will eventually correct itself again if he does win the Super Bowl. But yeah, on the long term, I think his cards are gonna definitely take an impact if he wins another Super Bowl.
Crazy, yeah.
I think it's gonna go up. It's tough because Mahomes's cards peaked when all of cards peaked, sort of like that February 2021 area, right after the Super Bowl. I can't imagine it going back to those prices, but I could see maybe like 80% of that price, which is a good step. That's not a bad thing. So I mean, it'll be huge. It's crazy to think, man, at the beginning of the season when he was struggling, like people were just like, "Oh, I'm off Mahomes." Like, he's good, but he's not Brady, or whatever. Right?
This is what day trading does, man. It kills
it's crazy.
You watch every game and you analyze in the smallest scope of frame that why you invested in the first place, is thrown out completely. It's game by game analytics from there.
Yeah, for sure.
What I'm most sad about is that during that time, I think that was right when we were about to go to those Toronto sports card shows.
Yeah.
And we were like talking about trying to pick up the optic holo. I'm sad. Like, I mean, we didn't see the prices that we liked, unfortunately. But man, had there been one for around $3,000 at that point, wish we could have picked up on that. But anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you guys. I think there's going to be a new floor for Mahomes cards if he goes back to the Super Bowl and wins. And then it just kind of builds from there. Because, I mean, if you look at his playoff stats, it's ridiculous. I think I just read it. He's 8-2 now. And the 2 losses came against Brady both times. Once with the Patriots, once with the Buccaneers. Crazy. But, Brady's out. So I think he's going to
it's definitely wide open, and it's going to be interesting to see because obviously, Joe Burrow is the other, surprising, I guess, factor. It was funny because there was a meme, or not a meme. I like to post a lot of memes, but there was I guess it's facts about Cincinnati, and it said nobody in human history has ever sent a text message about the Bengals winning a playoff game. The Bengals last playoff win was in 1991. The first text message was in 1992. That just blows my mind, and the fact that we could even say Joe Burrow's, competing for a Super Bowl, at least the title right now is pretty insane. So I think his prices are going to be affected as well if he does something stupid. But again, it's the same thing. It's these spikes in the news, and obviously it's a huge accomplishment. And in the long term, that will definitely affect card prices in a positive way. But I think it's gonna shoot up, and it's been shooting up. Joe Burrow, actually, his cards have been pretty crazy this year. So it's gonna be interesting to see after February when baseball starts getting hot again to see where prices go.
Yeah. What do you think, John?
Would you guys, I have a side thought. Would you guys buy any of these 4 quarterbacks right now? Would you guys recommend a buy?
You could answer that, Clark.
No, I don't think so. Like, everything's going higher from this point on until their team is out. So,
right,
exactly. If you want a card, you might as well wait.
Right.
For the off season.
Yeah, if you believe in the player, I think it's just the wrong time to buy it.
Yeah.
If you believe in the player in the first, or if you just believe in the player because he just won a Super Bowl, then that's probably the wrong reason to win it or to go in it, right? So it all depends.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I just mentioned that because, we talked about this many times, but this is the absolute worst time to buy. Like if you have these guys, you should definitely think about selling. But it's definitely like the buy window is long gone. These most of these guys will, unless we see Stafford win it or something, like that'll be like a completely brand new territory, and like Joe Burrow. But I think mostly sell.
Yeah, I think we all agree that Joe Burrow cards are already going out. We've seen it. If he beats the Chiefs and goes to the Super Bowl, that'll spike even more. But what do you think about the other side, the NFC? Matthew Stafford. So this is his first time getting this far in the playoffs. He's played for a lousy Detroit Lions for a number of years, and now he's taking the next step. And if you look at his cards, it's relatively cheap compared to Joe Burrow, compared obviously to Patrick Mahomes. So what do you think of Stafford cards? Do you think it's just a blip, or?
I'm the same way too. Like with Jimmy G, for instance, like guys that are, they're solid players, solid careers, but I don't think there's enough demand. And that's you see it in all the sports, right? Where someone who's putting 20 points per game. Let's even say Tatum at this point, right? But I'm saying Tatum has like great upside, but like someone like Stafford, he's not going to get love. And maybe over a 5-year period, I believe his prices may go up because of what he might accomplish in the next 5 years. But I don't see the volatility, I guess, that you see with Mahomes and kind of like even Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert's of the world, Tom Brady's even, right? So, yeah, much respect to all pro athletes. Like, they don't get the love, but yeah, I think they're gonna lack on the demand side for the cards, no matter what they do. I think you might see a little bump if they do something stupid in the next couple weeks, but I don't see their cards holding true value in terms of sustainability.
Okay.
Right. I still like Stafford. He was one of my picks at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Good pick.
Thanks, man. I still like him. I think he's a really good quarterback. But in terms of value, I will agree with Hyung. Stafford would be the type of pickup where you're sort of holding a bit long term and you're not expecting 2, 3, 4, 5x returns. But I mean, right now, if you were to get into Stafford, probably a little bit higher than normal, and you're just gambling. You're just literally gambling that he's going to win it, because it's win or bust for some of these values, right? Like he literally has to win it for it to get to a new floor. If he doesn't win it here, it'll just kind of be, stay status quo, right? So,
right.
I still like the purchase. It's just not, you won't see like insane returns on a pick like this. This is kind of like picking up Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of going to be kind of like a slow into the Hall of Fame kind of progression sort of value. So it's really up to the purchaser or whoever's buying.
Like a Nolan Arenado kind of.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
It's like no love, just no love.
Yeah. But his stats are impressive, right?
His stats are always impressive.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree. Not much more to add. Stafford is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated QBs. Like, he's been around a while. He's been putting up numbers despite being on lousy teams.
Right.
I think he's a Hall of Famer for sure when his career is done. And if he wins the Super Bowl at least once, he's kind of cemented that status. Mm-hmm. So Stafford's a long-term hold. Jimmy G, I mean, Niners are squeaking out victories. They're almost winning. Any way possible. It's not on Jimmy G. He's not taking. He's not carrying the team per se. So yeah, I'm out on Jimmy G. Yeah. But if you have him, sell, right?
Yeah,
it's a good time.
If you have him, I mean, you could get something for him right now rather than nothing, which is normal. So totally sell right now. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see what happens in a couple weeks when Super Bowl takes place. But I want to ask you guys before we close this off the top segment, our initial Super Bowl picks, they're all out.
Terrible.
I think Hyung chose the Cowboys. He was out first. I chose the Packers. Rogers again blew it. Yeah. And then Bucks for John.
Oh man.
Last to go. So let's just do this again. We have 1 in 4 shot. Who are you picking for the Super Bowl?
Oh man, you know what? The problem is by next week we could be wrong again. So it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot with these picks. But at this point, I gotta give it to Mahomes, man. Like the table's out set for him. I mean, he's big time player, big time moment. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's a Chiefs sweep, right? Okay, so let me ask you then, who would be your bet for underdog that just kind of can win, might beat the Chiefs and might, get to the Super Bowl and win it all if it's not the Chiefs?
Go for it, John.
It's got to be the Rams for me, like no question, because
Stafford, yeah.
I have zero. I don't even know how Stafford. If I was a Green Bay fan, I'm so thankful I'm not. I would be so upset. Like I don't know how they won. Like Jimmy G literally didn't do anything, and they won the game. It's insane. So I cannot see, I don't see it. I don't see them beating Matt Stafford and the Rams. And as much as Joe Burrow fans probably hate to hear this, I don't see them beating Mahomes either.
Okay. Stafford sweep? Or Rams sweep? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Watch it be Bengals and
Niners. Jimmy G versus Burrow.
If it's Bengals and Niners, we're never talking football again.
No,
okay?
For sure.
Let's agree upon that.
100% I agree. Yeah, we're out.
All right. So let's move on then to our next segment, Hobby Headlines. So in baseball, the big news this past week was the Baseball Hall of Fame induction, or should I say the non-induction of certain key players
Embarrassing.
in the steroid era. So namely, of course, is Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens we're talking about, which essentially makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for them to get into the Hall now that they're off the ballot after being on it for 10 years, right? So I think we're all kind of on the same side about whether Barry or Roger should have been in the Hall. So I don't really want to get into the debate of whether it's deserved or not. But instead, I want to discuss more generally what impact certain real-world news might have on sports card values. So let's start with the Hall of Fame induction. It's natural, I think, to think if a player gets into the Hall, they might see a bump in their rookie card values. But I want to ask, is that true? Or conversely, you can say, if they don't make it, are you expecting a drop-off in value? Like for Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens, what do you think is going to happen with their card values?
I think it's absolutely true. How much it goes, how much it spikes up is probably not the true value though. So I think that's a stipulation of kind of like a huge accomplishment in one's career, right? It should, bump up the prices of cards. At that moment, probably not the way it does, and vice versa. I think now that Barry Bonds, might not be eligible for the Hall of Fame, I don't know if his cards will, I guess, break new records per se, right? So, but I think, it absolutely has to impact the prices, and that's with all sports. And I always look at cards in the long term. There's no other way to look at cards other than the long term, and that's why it gets tricky, because had we not had, I guess, a day trading system such as eBay, obviously there wouldn't be comps. There would be a lot more, I guess, sense in investing and collecting, because we all go under the intention of, this guy's going to be a GOAT, or, it's the potential that this player has. And then we watch game by game and we totally forget why we invested in that player, right? So, 100% for me. I think something like the Hall of Fame and just big news in general does help the value of cards. But for Hall of Fame, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. I think everybody obviously is trying to replicate what happened with the Jordan documentary. It's obviously perfect timing. we all know all the reasons why it was such a phenomenon. And then I think the Tiger one, people were kind of, I think that's probably the next one to come out, right? Everybody was kind of trying to do the same thing, and it obviously kind of a lot of people were left holding the bag. I think at this point, they always say sell the rumor, not the news, in investment platforms. That'll still obviously hold true, but now it's up to everybody to try to figure out what's that point, what's that rumor point for some of these things, right? Like Drive to Survive, Netflix PGA Tour, like World Cup. Everybody is aware of the seasonality changes. Everybody's aware of certain big events. Like for example, the World Cup, everybody keeps saying, oh, like the Mbappe, this, that, blah, blah, blah is going to be huge. World Cup's coming up. But when the World Cup actually comes up and everybody and their moms are listing their Mbappe cards, it's going to go down, right? So like
it's too late. Yeah.
It's way too late. So now I think everybody, it's up to everybody to, because everybody's smart. They're trying to play that system, right? If everybody's doing it, it's not going to work. So it's up to us to kind of figure out, when is that rumor season? When is that point where you feel it's time? Like the hype is a little bit, it's growing. Maybe you won't take like max profits, but this is sort of the time to go, right? So I think that's hopefully you guys understand what I'm trying to get at, but that's kind of going to be the challenge now in all of these TV shows or events that we know could bump up values. It's the timing of when to sell will become important.
Yeah, no, I get the nuance of everything now. Like hobbyists and people coming into it are definitely more educated and know when the spikes should happen. So you got to always think a step ahead. And I actually wanted to dig in deeper with those different docuseries you already mentioned and with the major sporting events. So we'll get into that in a second. But using the Hall of Fame, going back to that as an example, I think when the hobby was hot, any piece of news would just spike the card values. Like it was automatic. But now that the card market's kind of settled down and we're where we are now, I think it's not automatic. So like you kind of mentioned it with the Tiger documentary, like people almost expected it to have the same effect as the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan cards, but I don't think it happened in the same way. And I think the Hall of Fame is similar. Like it's not an automatic that certain card values will peak. It depends on the player now, right? It depends on, whether the player's liked or whether, what the public perception is of certain players, and so I think it's just more nuanced than that. But I do agree now on the flip side with Barry Bonds, if we look at his card values, like what else would make it spike? There's, he's out of the game now, right? And there's not going to be a lot of news unless he somehow gets into the hall from a backdoor kind of way. And then maybe he's back in the news and that'll spike the values. But, there's no foreseeable thing that I could think of that would all of a sudden peak his prices. So
I think you make a good point, and like that's where I was kind of alluding to is marketing runs our world, right? So when you see stuff like the Netflix documentary, like the HBO Tiger Woods and stuff like that, I believe it's a form of marketing that gets attention.
Yeah.
Right. So in reality, should the value of a card on a supply demand range like go up in value? It could, because now you just have more eyes basically on that, and you might potentially have more buyers with the same amount of supply, right? And this is what usually happens as people day trade, the prices correct itself, right? But something like the Olympics, World Cup, Hall of Fame, these are more things that solidify someone's career path, right? And I think that's the selling point for me of what they could accomplish. It's not a fake marketing like shill almost, where it's like, oh, there's a hype of Tiger Woods documentary, so let's get. In reality, nothing really happened. I think if in reality, maybe the accident might have spiked the price in weird ways, because people were starting to think about Tiger in a real sense of, was he the greatest golfer? Is he going to even survive? Is he going to live? So those are more real questions. So I feel like those Netflix documentaries and the hype, kind of like the hype and even like Super Bowls, for instance, like all this, I think it's all hype. It's all marketing. And true value, yeah, on the long term, if people do things successful, like the Joe Burrow situation, if he ends up winning a Super Bowl, yeah, long term, I could see his cards definitely on a long run, right? Just because, but it shouldn't spike like crazy and be more expensive than, let's just say, someone who's accomplished more in their career, for instance, right? So that's where I kind of see through the fluff of the marketing and try to focus on, again, that's why I kind of alluded to the long-term perspective on investing, right? Why did you originally invest in the card? I think that's the right way to look at it, because these sporting events, yeah, it might be great for flipping and profit because you could time the market, but that's not originally why I personally got in the game, right? So I think there's a lot of I guess gray areas in what we're talking about with the docuseries, major sporting events, but I do feel like some are true. Some hold true value in terms of what that event might cause for cards to go up.
Yeah. No, I see that for sure. And I like your point about the whole marketing aspect of different sports. Get more eyeballs on it, more interest,
right?
And then you increase the buy side, right?
Right, and that's why I like the F1, kind of like the F1 market, is because if they could get the right amount of eyes on it, it could totally change, because the supply really doesn't change. But what will that do to if you have more players in the game, right?
So. I'd be interested to see the movement of Barry Bonds cards right now. Because I feel like whether he was announced to go into the hall and the reality was he didn't, there's still conversation around Barry Bonds. And that's good enough for him to be top of mind and people to be buying. Because I don't think really, if you're a Barry Bonds fan or if you're a baseball fan, I don't think this induction or non-induction really changes your mind about who you think Barry Bonds
100%.
is. You either think he's one of the greatest
100%.
of all time, or you think he's a complete cheat, right? It won't change you. So just the fact that the conversation is happening, good or bad, like any publicity is good publicity. I could imagine Barry Bonds cards right now. Maybe they're not spiking, but they're selling. Like last week there was no Barry Bonds sold, and this week there could have been 30, right?
I'll say something. Stuff like his Topps Tiffany, like we're talking really high end stuff, they will never go down. I guarantee you they're on a long run still, and they're gonna potentially fetch record breaking sales. Eventually, as crazy as that sounds. But yeah, in general, like your 1986 Topps traded Barry Bonds PSA 10, I've seen it anywhere from in the last 3 years from $70 to $1,000 down to 80 up to 500 down to 100. So it's like I could see that happening with that card again, right? And yeah, but in terms of the like super high end stuff, I don't think. And when I say super high end, it's back then it was only Topps Tiffany. Really, it's like the gloss stock or gloss back, right? So yeah.
Because the supply is
right.
Will always be small, right?
It's just too small, right? And there's too many people that, like John said, believe in Barry Bonds. Like He is for me, Barry Bonds is the greatest baseball player of all time. Period. Boom. I said it. Like to me, like
hot take.
In his era, I'm telling you, man. I was playing professional baseball in his era. There are so many cheaters. So it's like, I guess it's the saying where
cheaters versus cheaters, man. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's like if you don't get caught, that's the stipulation. Yeah. It's like we need to give ourselves a shake. But anyways, we said we're not going to talk about.
We're not going to talk about it. But there is some truth to what you're saying. Yeah, like without going into it further, there's a lot of articles where MLB there's been cheaters since 1908 to the present, right?
Yeah,
different kinds, and then it's weird that we're kind of singling this incident out and punishing the people that were involved.
Come on, Bud Selig can't be in the Hall of Fame and Barry Bonds not. Come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But, like with Barry Bonds, and we'll go on to the next subject after this. One of the reasons why I actually checked prices over the last week, and it's pretty consistent, about $500 now for PSA 10 Topps traded.
Right.
This is because of the volume. Like there's 50,000 of those graded,
right?
Yeah. And like about 5,000 or 6,000 are PSA 10. So the supply is, junk wax era, right? But with the Tiffany, yeah, you're right. It's like 15,000, 16,000 now. Like those aren't going down anytime soon. Because you'll have that demand. Like you said,
Right.
there are people that love Barry Bonds. And I agree. Like I saw a clip of on Twitter where, someone said the fear that Barry Bonds had to put in a team when they walked him with the bases loaded.
Unreal.
All the time.
I remember that.
You'll never see that again.
You'll never see that again.
We watch that all the time. That was insane.
Yeah, that was
insane.
That's crazy. That's just unheard of. It's like, you know what? We'll give one run because we don't want, potential.
We don't want a
four.
grand slam. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
That's
He was putting up Nintendo numbers in the 2000s. Like, it was stupid. And I was a big fan, like growing up watching him in the 90s when he was with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That was like how I knew about Barry Bonds. It's like, holy geez, him, Bobby Bonilla, those big names,
Bobby
right?
Bonilla.
So so the fact that Barry did it in 3, I guess, decades, just dominating,
Crazy,
and getting better and better. It's like in the 90s, he unbelievable numbers, and then in the 2000s, like Nintendo numbers, right? So.
Okay. This could be like the Barry Bonds show, but we'll move on. We touched upon the docuseries, like Netflix's Drive to Survive with F1. Actually, let's dig in a bit deeper. Do you think, what we all said about the marketing, do you think there's substance there for F1 cars to continue to grow? Or do you think it's one of those things where it's good for 1 or 2 seasons? So let's start with Drive to Survive. And then right after, if you have a thought on the upcoming Netflix series on the PGA Tour, will that highlight golf in a different way where more people will be interested in the sport? What do you guys think?
I certainly hope so. I think it's going to encourage the game itself, and I think as people buy into that, I think there's just going to be a lot more people dabbling into cards, right? Especially the niche like hockey, golf, areas where there's so much potential, like F1, and I hope that this could shine light in a positive way. Especially in those areas, because I think if those sports pick up, that just proves that the card market is a real market, right? And when we're seeing it across multiple industries or sports, let's say, and it could go into Star Wars, Ninja Turtles, Marvel, right? And it's all the same concept, right? So to me, that's a strong bullish sign, and that's why I've always been bullish, because it's not like, will this work and will it work in one market or other? I think it's a lot bigger than what we can even imagine, because we're in such a infant stages of an industry, right? So there's so much room to develop. So I'm hoping that all these, documentaries, all these, record-breaking sales and news, they're all positive, news, that fundamentals that affect the card market in a positive way. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so too, but I'm a little pessimistic on Drive to Survive and F1 series. I mentioned it before. I'm still a little weary. Like I still can't get a grasp of whether F1 is completely organic and everybody's really that into it, or the market right now, it's been a pattern that the market is continually trying to find the next big thing, right? And F1 came out and the cards came out. It was pretty popular. It was right at the time where we're ripping and the hobby was kind of exploding, and it just happened to have a low print run because I guess Topps wasn't sure whether this was going to be big or not. And it was just the right formula of kind of everything happening at once. And obviously for guys like us that are not really into F1, but we're seeing the prices go astronomical, it's going to catch our attention. And I think that's kind of what was happening. I feel like that's a big component of why F1 in the sports card industry has been so crazy. And so I'm not sure if that the prices right now, like Hyung was saying, is sort of like false prices based on the marketing and the fluff, or if this is actually real. So I'm still, I think we recommended Lewis Hamilton because it's clear in the sports card scene, people are very bullish on GOATs, and doesn't matter the sport, GOATs are sort of like rock solid. So I think Lewis Hamilton is fine. But outside of that, I'm not sure. I'm not as completely bullish about F1. I want to kind of wait and see exactly what happens, because the market can just be like, hey, let's just move on to the next greatest and the best thing, and then it's sort of left in the dust, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's totally fair. Totally fair. I only have 1 or 2 points on this. The first one is, I think for docuseries, the quality matters of how it's produced.
Good point.
And I think we all agree that, or most people will agree that Drive to Survive is a well-produced docuseries. It's keeps your attention. I actually started watching season 3. I didn't watch season 1 or 2. I just started right at season 3.
Oh, really?
And I've been binge watching it for about a week. So it's caught my attention.
So well
and
made.
it's all about character development, right? Like you can find good characters in it, like you can with F1 drivers. Then you got a good formula. No pun intended. But the second thing is, it depends on the sport itself too. Like I think F1 has the potential to grow because F1 is international. Like I think it's kind of like soccer in a lot of ways, where in North America it's not huge, but in the rest of the world it is.
Absolutely.
Right? Like it's just, we have this like kind of tunnel vision of what's happening in North America, but I think as the hobby grows, and that includes outside of North America, it has the power to sustain sports like F1 and soccer, especially. That's kind of on the forefront as well. So I think those 2 points kind of stand out for me to keep in mind whether a sport is going to grow in the hobby. And it's not always, and it, like going back to the quality point, like there's been a documentary on Tony Parker. You're not seeing his card spike, or it hasn't done anything, right? Even Neymar, I just saw a Netflix special on.
That's right.
And Neymar's a great player, but like no one's talking about the Neymar documentary right now. Right. So it depends on what people are talking about, how well it's produced. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I pulled up something interesting where the viewership of F1 in 2017, it was at 470 million. And by 2019, they got it up to 1.9 billion. Okay, this was before the docuseries, right? So if you just put it into perspective, we talk about like Neymar. It's like this is why I believe, well, just coming from a marketing background, to me, it's big because what F1 did was they captivated their audience. And for me, it's a numbers game from here, is how many captivated audience can they make that correlation now with sports cards, right? And that's where I think it could really take off. It's one of the biggest, like you said, it's the biggest viewership, probably worldwide in terms of any sport, and they just never been marketed to. If I had 1.9 billion people to market to, geez Louise, like for me, it's like, this is any salesperson's dream, right? So like, I see it that way, and I see the huge potential in that. And obviously the merging of technology as well. So we don't know where this industry is going to go, but yeah, just pulling out that fact of, 3x growth in terms of viewership,
crazy,
in 2-3 seasons. And that was done with intention, right? They intentionally did that. So it's just a wider view of audience that really intrigues me so much, right? So it's like, they ain't printing any more Topps Chrome Sapphire, Lewis Hamiltons, right? So it's like that pop report's probably going to stay somewhat relative, right? And you just add, 1.9 billion people into that market, that's my thinking.
Crazy.
So.
Yeah.
Right. And it's perspective. We all sit here in North America. If we were doing this podcast and we were living in like London, England, F1 is life. Like it would be completely different, right? So
100%.
Yeah. Totally agree. Okay. And I just want to close off this segment, and we already talked about this too, but more specifically with major sporting events like the Olympics coming up in February and World Cup later on this year in Qatar. What do you think that will do to card market values? And, I know the NHL players aren't sending anyone to the Winter Olympics, which is a damn shame.
Yeah.
But just say they did, or maybe for the next one in 4 years. Do you think that something like that could impact hockey card values, like as an example?
I think so, because it's adding to people's legacies, right? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what usually happens. It's if they don't win, they're not gonna, like, if let's just say talk about the World Cup, like if whoever, pick up soccer player Sonny, let's just say, he doesn't win a World Cup. If he wins a World Cup, of course his prices are gonna take an effect, because he just put something on his resume that a lot of people don't have. So for me, it's part of those things where like a Hall of Fame, where it's a chance where, you know, the superstar players can build part of their legacy, right? So it's you're just witnessing it. So whether they do it or not, you know, let's just see it in a course of 10 years though, right? Just not this moment, this year that, you know, prices are going to rocket because of a certain player. It's more so soccer is going to be, you know, a lot of people are going to be watching soccer this summer. So it's for sure a great time to sell, you know? So that's,
exactly.
Yeah. Olympics is such a shame because I think hockey, you know, everybody's, you know, talking about hockey right now, and it's feels like the hockey card market is sort of bubbling, and it just needs that one springboard. And I think Olympics was going to be that springboard. So it's really sad. As number one, as a hockey fan, it's sad. And then number two, as a sports card collector, you know, if you're one out there that's sitting on a lot of hockey cards, like this was a huge moment, especially if you're sitting on a bunch of like McDavid, Crosby, and Ovechkin cards. Like this would have been huge, right? But yeah, it's a shame. It's too bad.
Yeah, I like what you said too about like investing in superstar players. It would like it. I don't think it would impact just anyone that's involved in the Olympics or in the World Cup, but it could have a potential great impact on superstar players that are more likely to make key plays during those competitions. And then people are like, oh, I want Sonny's card because he just scored the game-winning goal for Korea, or you know, you know, Sid Crosby when he got the golden goal. I'm sure if cards were hot back then, Crosby's card would have been one of the hottest on the market
for sure.
So I think that's right. So one thing I'm kind of glad about is I didn't trade in my Shohei Ohtani for Nathan McKinnon since Canada's not playing.
Right.
So dodged a bullet there. All right, I think this was a good discussion to have. It's just like I think some people in the hobby might think like any news is good news and it just spikes, but I think there's a lot of nuance now, and you just got to, like, you know, Hyung, you mentioned long term is probably the best way to see things, the best perspective to have. But yeah, just be aware of what's going on and how it could impact prices, because it's going to have some impact, but to what degree is the big question, right? So yeah, good discussion. All right, let's move on then to a new segment we're calling Hockey Highlights. Now, this segment is in response to one of the feedbacks we received for this podcast to talk more hockey. So here it is. And we asked John, who is our resident hockey guy, to take over this segment. And I'm going to ask him to highlight his top 5 or 10 list of hockey cards he would invest in. All right, so John, take it away.
All right, pretty excited about this. Sadly, I don't own any of these cards, okay, but I would love to at some point. So I'm going to break it down, my top 5 vintage and top 5 modern. It's not necessarily what I believe are like the best investments or the most expensive cards on the list. I just think that these are, they're among the top 10 players of all time, in my opinion. And I think they're great purchases. So in vintage is actually really expensive, but we're going to go in order from lowest to highest. Okay. At number 5, I have, no vintage is, a list without a Montreal Canadian. For those that don't follow hockey, Montreal Canadian is probably the most historic and decorated, team of all time. It's basically the New York Yankees of hockey. So you got to have a Montreal Canadian on here, as much as it hurts me to say that as a Leaf fan. So the 51 Parkers, Maurice Richard, the Rocket Richard Trophy. Yeah. He's one of the best players of all time. I think his name continues to be relevant, especially because of the trophy itself. It's a pretty new trophy. And it's goal scoring. Like, Rocket Richard was known for goal scoring. That's like the sexiest thing in hockey. You're a home run hitter in baseball, right? So I got Maurice Richard, 51 Parkhurst rookie card at number 5. Now, the 51 Parkhurst, these cards are really, really hard to get. I think it's like trying to find Mickey Mantle, 52 okay. Mickey Mantle. So number 4 is 66 Topps Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr's rookie. Nice. I don't know if you remember the image, but it kind of looks, kind of has like a wood border. It looks like he's in a TV.
Yeah.
Iconic. Bobby Orr's
yeah.
iconic card, absolutely. So if you're gonna get a Bobby Orr rookie, like the Bobby Orr rookie card, arguably for some greatest player of all time, I have him at number 2 all time. So we got Bobby Orr. Number 3, this is kind of, this card is kind of like the Mickey Mantle of hockey. It's the 54 Topps Gordie Howe. It's just a beautiful looking card. It's still super low pop in any condition. It's pretty hard to find, but they're out there. Like if you go on eBay, you can find it at PSA 1, PSA 4. They are quite expensive. So this is one of those vintage Gordie Howe, top 5 for most people, regularly traded cards. It's a grail card for many collectors, hockey and vintage. At number 2, we got another Gordie Howe. So I can't mention the 54 Topps without the 51 Parkers. So the 51 Parkers, the same set as the Maurice Richard. This is Gordie Howe's rookie card. So this is actually like the Honus Wagner of hockey. Okay. Like I don't even know how many are out there in existence. Like 100, not, I don't know, maybe less than 500. Like this is a super rare card. So if you can even get one authentic, it's going to cost you a lot. But this is one of those like all-time grail vintage cards for any like major hockey collector. And number 1, you got to put in 1979 Gretzky O-Pee-Chee. Like right. This is the, across vintage and modern, this is the iconic card of all time of the GOAT. Gretzky's the GOAT to me. So you gotta put that card in. I know some people will kind of argue because there's a lot of them in existence versus some of these other vintage cards, but you can't not put Gretzky at number 1.
There's enough players in the game. There's enough people buying in the game. Seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
At that card, right?
Yeah. Look at the value of the cards that are selling for right now. Right. Still. But yeah, I would have thought if you didn't include that on your list as number 1, you would have lost all credibility and we would have shut down the segment right now.
You just literally took me down memory lane of flipping through Beckett price guides and seeing those cards. Seriously. Yeah. Nostalgia, absolutely.
For sure.
Even like the Ken Dryden rookies, like
that's a big one too, for sure.
Yeah, they're just very iconic that as a kid it's so nostalgic, right? So it's like all those cards you mentioned, I just remember looking through Beckett's, looking through the magazines and just being in awe.
Yeah. Good times.
The number 5 spot I flip-flopped, so I have an honorable mention, which is the 58 Topps Bobby Hull rookie card. That's another huge, in the history of sports card collecting for hockey, that's a huge card that people buy and trade, and it's on their grail list. So that's up there too. For the Gretzky, I got to make a distinction for obviously hockey fans and collectors. This is a sort of a duh moment, but it's the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky, not the Topps Gretzky.
Right.
So I think it was in 79 where O-Pee-Chee got a deal with Topps, and from 79 to 89 or whatever, like a 10-year period, they pretty much made the exact same cards. There's a Topps version and an O-Pee-Chee version. But Hobby Logic,
best way to look?
Yeah, Hobby Logic, whatever way you want to look at it, obviously in Canada, hockey was the biggest, and O-Pee-Chee is a Canadian company. So for hockey cards during that era, you go for O-Pee-Chee over Topps, 100%. It's worth like 10x what the Topps version.
John, how do you? This is for our listeners and people who are newer to hockey. How do you distinct between like a Topps and an O-Pee-Chee, especially if somebody might be dealing with the raw card, right? Because O-Pee-Chee looks a lot rougher in terms of the edges as opposed to Topps, right? And there's other stuff like that orange mark on that on the O-Pee-Chee versus the Topps, right? You want to just talk about that?
Yeah. You know what's funny is I don't know what happened with the printing presses, if they used different printing presses back then, or like the cutting machines back then. But O-Pee-Chee cuts are horrible, and Topps cuts are like crisp, clean, right? So in terms of your question, though, you obviously see in small font, you'll see the logo O-Pee-Chee or Topps at the front. You get really confused because the cards are literally identical, but it's either the O-Pee-Chee logo at the front in either the top or right-hand corner. And if you flip the card, I don't know if this is the case for every single set, but the O-Pee-Chee cards will have French and English writing on the back. So that's another bit like a dead giveaway that you're looking at O-Pee-Chee.
That's a good point. Don't think you got a great deal on an OPG card and it happens to be tops.
Right.
I know people make that mistake. Yeah,
it happens all the
lot.
time. Even with PSA slabs, like I'm like, dude, this is a tops. It's not OPG. They're like, oh my god, I didn't even notice the difference.
Yeah. You first look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a steal, and you start looking at it and you're like, oh, hang on, wait a minute.
Yeah,
you
that's
gotta
why.
Be careful.
Yeah, the raw cards might be out of the question.
All right,
don't buy a raw Gretzky.
And then I have a top 5 for modern, which I'll go through.
So can I ask you?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How do you define modern before you go? Like from what year?
Right.
80s.
I don't know the exact definition, but I feel like 80, like right at 1980, we're gonna start to. I think I remember seeing the definition at one point or another. It's either like 80 or 84, or 83 or something like that. So 80. Whatever the 80s is to present is considered modern. And then obviously Gretzky 79 and prior is considered vintage.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. So we're going 80s and up considered modern. At number 5, this was a tough one. I really went back and forth. But it was between 2 cards. It's the OPG Patrick Waugh is going to be the honorable mention. So my actually number 5 is going to be the 84 OPG Yzerman.
Nice.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
A lot of cards can slot in at number 5 here. You got Brett Hall. There's a lot of all-time greats, but I just like Yzerman. I think anyone who watched hockey, number one, he was an absolutely fantastic player. He's probably top 15, top 20 all time. For some people, top 10. And he's just well liked. I don't think I knew not one hockey fan that didn't like Yzerman. He was a consummate pro, kind of like a Derek Jeter type of person. And he's relevant now, right? He's killing the GM world. He's one of the best GMs. So I think because of his relevance, I gave him the edge over Patrick Waugh. I think the Patrick Waugh rookie card goes for a bit more. But in this spot, I personally like the Yzerman. Okay. So we got Yzerman. 4, 3, 2 are no-brainers. It's going to be at 4, McDavid. Ovechkin at 3, and for me, it's 2, Crosby. We're going to go with the SP Authentic Future Watch Autos. And here, I mean, you can put any big boy cards of these guys. Obviously, at the most expensive would be the Cup, which is like flawless. The Cup Rookie Patch Auto would be the absolute most expensive. But I think the SP Authentic is making so many moves right now, and it's selling like daily, right? So those are on everybody's sort of like grail list at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
People will probably fight me on this list, having Crosby number 2. But I just,
like me,
for me, I think Crosby, when all is said and done, he's just synonymous with, especially for Canadians, and Canadians sort of dominate the hockey space in the collecting world. He's synonymous with like greatness and Canadian, like when you think of like Captain Canada over the years, you probably think of Gretzky, and then you think of Crosby. Like those are the 2 big figureheads of like modern era.
Yeah.
And he's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. I think right now McDavid and Ovechkin is stealing a lot of spotlight from him. But when it all is said and done, and he is going to retire in 2, 3, 4 years, I think his cards are going to really bounce back up. So even from an investment point, I think he's a real big buy low versus Ovechkin and McDavid. And think about this, like if anybody knew the pricing history between Crosby and Ovechkin, Crosby was always far ahead from Ovechkin. Like Ovechkin wasn't too far behind, but Crosby was always ahead. And it wasn't until people started murmuring about Ovechkin beating Gretzky's goal scoring record that his cards start to really get up there, right? So I think when people start talking about Crosby again and his career and all that, yada yada yada, I think he's a good buy low candidate. And then lastly, number 1, it's got to be 85 OPG Mario Lemieux. That's a grail card for so many people. I know for me, I never was able to get it as a young collector when I was younger, but I wanted that card so bad. That and the Gretzky, but yeah, that's on 85 OPG Lemieux. Big time grail card for any hockey player. Yeah,
for sure. Great list. Yeah, I was going to ask, like, where's Mario? I guess you saved it for the I was going to, like, grill you on this. I was ready.
No. Yeah, I got him in there.
It was him and Gretzky, man.
Yeah.
They're always head-to-head, man.
Yeah, for sure.
two guys that when I was making this list, I was thinking about my top 10 all-time list. And it's sad, but I really want, because in my top 10 all-time, I have Yager in the list and I have Lidstrom in the list, Nick Lidstrom. I think Nick Lidstrom is the second best defenseman of all time behind Bobby Orr. And it's sad because those two great players had rookie cards during the junk slab era or junk wax era, right?
Right.
So their cards are, you can get the Nick Lidstrom OPG Premier rookie card for like $100 in a PSA 10.
Yeah.
You can get the Yager for like $300. Like,
Yeah.
when you're talking like top 10 all-time hockey, it's just sad to see that those cards are at those prices. But could it be a buy low? I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a good list. I think I would have preferred to sneak in Patrick Waugh in the number 5 slot.
Yeah, that's that. I went back and forth, but I understand.
And then there's, with these, and anytime you make a list, you're always going to have people like, oh, how about this player? Like, Mark Messier, like that's a big guy.
That's a big one.
Right?
Yeah.
Brett Hall.
Brett Hall's
a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was no easy task. But what did you think, Hyung, of Johnny's list?
You just took me, like I said, you took me down memory lane, man. I'm telling you. Like I actually collected a lot of hockey.
Oh, we all did.
That's
man.
why. Exactly. So, but obviously I'm not into hockey right now. But I do agree with you guys that hockey is. I'm bullish on hockey just because I like the attention it's getting. I like that. There's a team in Las Vegas, to be honest. I think it's a great city to have hockey, and it brings more attention to it too as well. So I'm looking forward to hockey and maybe dabbling into it a bit, and maybe like this is what happens with Clark every week. I guess that's my eBay searches for the next couple days.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, John, for that education.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll try to do more hockey every now and then. And again, we always appreciate the feedback that we get from our podcast. You never know when we turn it into a segment like this. All right. Okay, let's end off this show then with our regular weekly segment called Pick One. All right, so this week, the Pick One is our hot takes edition. So what we're going to do is each of us, we're going to present 2 hot takes, 2 hobby hot takes, and then we'll debate which is the hotter hot take, I guess, and what we think is more likely to happen. All right. So Hyung, you want to kick things off?
Let's do it. This one is the 2022 50 Home Run Club. Who's going to do it this year out of the 23-year-old studs that we have, or 22, wherever they are? Vladimir Guerrero hits 50 home runs in 2022, or Fernando Tatis hits 50 home runs in 2022. And I have to emphasize this because I feel, this could potentially impact card prices a lot this year, right? Putting, 50 home run season up by one of these 2 young studs.
I like it.
I think both.
It could happen.
It could happen, man. I hope both, because that's just going to shine so much light on baseball as a category.
Fun. Yeah.
All right, but the real pick, I really want it to be Tatis. Obviously, a little bit biased because I got so many Tatis cards, but I think Vladdy is primed to do it. From what we saw last year, I think we all believe that it was no fluke, and he's gonna flirt. I think he literally will flirt with the Triple Crown again. So he's gonna be up there, regardless of if he hits 50 or not. He's gonna be in contention to try to make it happen. And in terms of what it does for his prices, if he does that again, if he's in triple, the threat category again, I gotta imagine his cards start to creep into like Acuna, upwards of Soto kind of category in terms of prices. The Soto, as similar as they can be, the Soto's a little bit tougher because of obviously the selection and pop and all that stuff. He's kind of in a unique situation, but just in general, in terms of actual raw player and stats and skill set, I'm gonna pick Vladdy. I think he's got the slight edge in terms of percentage likelihood of this happening. I like Vladdy, and obviously Tatis because of the injury, the proneness.
Yeah. Such a homer pick. But I'm choosing Vladdy as well. I'm choosing Vladdy, and it's mostly because of health. Like if for 50 homers, I think the person that can stay healthy, with that, each of them having the talent that they do have, the capability of hitting 50 homers in a season, I think health will be the tiebreaker for me. So I'm going with Vladdy. It doesn't hurt that I have Vladdy first Bowman Chrome Auto card, but I also have a Tatis Topps Chrome Auto, so I kind of hedged for this question. But
guys, it had nothing to do with prices. I was just asking who would hit 50.
But no, oh man, if either of those hit 50,
prices
you're seeing,
I think
you're seeing 2-3x for sure in season.
I think especially what you said, John, Vladdy, prices are so cheap, right? So if he does that with another season, the way he had last year, I think people are going to be all in on Vladdy at that point. Like you're talking elite superstar, one of the best hitters, in the game, for modern players. But for me, I'm going to actually go Tatis. I think he just hits a lot more home runs at a rate that Vladdy doesn't. And he swings and misses more, I believe, often. And Vladdy's more of a pure hitter than Tatis. So I think Tatis is actually going to do it this year. I don't think Vladdy's going to do it. I think he's going to hit. And part of me says a lot of Vladdy's, I wouldn't say a lot of Vladdy's home runs because he's been hitting at ridiculous rates all season last year, but he was on fire when he was playing in Buffalo. If you see his OPS, in Buffalo, as opposed to the Rogers Center, his production did go down. That could have been a lot of factors, such as he might have been tired, just a long season. But I believe Buffalo did give him an edge at a hitter's park. So I think part of his numbers were inflated a bit. But what I see from Tatis is a totally different player. I think his power. It's not saying that Tatis has more power than Vlad. I just think his swing just, he gets under a lot more balls, and you see it in Tatis's stats. Like he hit whatever he did, 42 and under 500 at bats. That's insane. If you give him 650 plate appearances a season, the guy might hit 60, right? So I'm gonna say Tatis, but I would love for both of them to do it because I think it would be great for the hobby. Yes. And that was the 2019 chase, right? So I'd like to see it, but I'm not gonna go with the sweep. I'm gonna say Tatis is gonna do it this year.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
Very doable, yeah. Nice one.
Nice.
John?
Yep. So we got, in honor of the name of our podcast, Cards to the Moon, we have to do a Cards to the Moon 1v1. So I'm gonna go with Joe Burrow wins the Super Bowl and his card goes to the moon, or Ja Morant wins the NBA championship and his card goes to the moon. Now, one of these picks could be wrong by the time this podcast airs.
That's the problem. You're shooting yourself. You're either looking like a genius or you're looking like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see what happens.
Clark, I let you be the first idiot.
Oh, geez. All right. Oh man, this is a tough one because I'm gonna go with Ja Morant. It's a tough one because Joe Burrow is one game away from doing it.
Almost
right?
there, yeah. But he's almost one game of losing.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
that's
either
true.
way.
That's true also. But I mean, and the Grizzlies probably won't win. But I'm taking it as if one of them wins, which one's going to go to the moon? I think it's Ja Morant's basketball cards for sure. I think there's just more demand for basketball cards, and I think Ja Morant cards it's definitely seen an increase, but not as quickly as I would have expected for the way he's performing now. Legit all-star, and he was injured for a little bit too during the season, and he's back. Yeah. And I wish I bought a card while he was injured, and because I could just totally seeing it go even further higher. So I'm going with Ja Morant.
Nice.
This is tough because it's exactly what Clark said. It's like I don't want to pick Joe Burrow because he could be out next week by the time this podcast airs, and I've done that many times. So I've
or
learned my lesson.
Or you could
from
look
that.
genius.
I could look genius, but with football, it doesn't seem like that exists. So, and like Clark, like obviously, there's a 25% chance. I guess that would be the odds of Joe Burrow squeaking one out, and the NBA season hasn't even been finalized yet. So, I think, and there's a lot more that Ja Morant has to do to attain that, I guess, or win a championship. It hasn't even started, right?
Yeah.
But I do love, to your point you made, Clark, when he was injured. I remember he was getting hated on a bit, and he was just saying, like I put all of the effort in, and when I screw up, like I hear it from the fans, and he had a personal vendetta, kind of like, I'm better than all these guys that get the hype. The fact that he took Memphis to the top, like we're talking, they're on fire right now, and
they're third in the Western Conference.
That's insane for them to even be in the conversation. We're saying maybe a 500 team, maybe squeaks into the playoffs, but now you see where Ja took that team, and I've seen Ja prices go insane, and I like the fact that his prices went so low is because I always was bullish on Ja. I think he's a phenomenal player that's gonna, turn heads, and he's gonna be a 30-point scorer, a season in his career. So for me, even though the route is harder to win an NBA championship based on where they are today, I'm still gonna go Ja Morant, because I believe that if he does he wins a championship, I think his prices are gonna go insane, because they were insane before he even won a championship. So for me to have that potential, I really like. Whereas Joe Burrow, we don't know what we're gonna see. He might be gone next week, and it's just the end of the story. And if he does win a Super Bowl, I think they won't go to Mahomes prices, because like for me, it's like Mahomes built that over a few years of what he's done. Fast forward, Burrow does this for another 2-3 seasons where he's wins a Super Bowl, and then he's constantly inconsistent. Then it's a different story. But I think realistically, Ja Morant, his prices could go to the moon just because they were already right. So I like that they're retracted where they are, and it's a perfect marriage with Memphis going in. At the beginning of the season, I think I said Miami and Golden State, so that could still happen. But I think Memphis might surprise some people.
Sure.
Yeah. I like that point about Joe Burrow prices. It's also, his prices right now is almost as if he's already won the Super Bowl, right? So
right,
it's baked in.
Yeah. So even if he wins, I think it might create a new floor, but who knows if it actually goes to the moon. But aside from that, 45 minutes ago, we all said Patrick Mahomes as our pick. So simply the fact not to contradict ourselves, I really want it to not be a sweep, but it's got to be a sweep. Like I don't, as much as, the Ja Morant pick will be also pretty tough, because Joe Burrow's one win away. I think if he gets past, I think the Super Bowl is literally next week. If one of those, Joe Burrow, Mahomes moves on, that's probably going to be the Super Bowl champ, right? So he's literally one game away, whereas Ja has a big battle ahead of him. It's looking nice if they end up in third or second or something like that. This is the first time I think the Grizzlies will have home court. Probably means Ja's going to exit out of the first round. I mean, like, move on from the first round, and his prices could start to really move, right? Even if he doesn't end up with the championship. So, yeah, it's gonna be a sweep. It's gonna be Ja.
Right.
But mostly just on the fact that what do I know about football? But based on what I saw, I feel like the Chiefs are gonna destroy Cincinnati, and that's probably not something the Bengals fans want to hear, but that's sort of what I believe. So I think
the Bengals fans are happy, just happy as is right now.
They got where they are, and they have a stud quarterback for the future.
Yeah, absolutely,
go. For sure.
Yeah, I like it still. All right, speaking of the Chiefs, my pick one hot takes are Patrick Mahomes in the future. Patrick Mahomes rookie cards will surpass Tom Brady rookie cards in value. It's a hot take, right?
Hot take.
Versus Hey, this it's called hot take for a reason. Versus Connor McDavid rookie cards will surpass Wayne Gretzky rookie cards in value.
This was tough at first for me, Clark. It really threw me a wrinkle in my brain that I didn't like. But then I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Mahomes' cards might surpass Tom Brady's if it hasn't already. So I actually checked, and the highest value Mahomes card did sell for $4.3 million versus $3.1 million. So for me, I know that's a RPA, and it's not your typical rookie cards because Brady Bowman Chromes just are unaffordable compared to Mahomes, like let's say Prism, right? Or even XRC. I don't even know what XRCs are at, but they're two totally different cards. But the fact that a Mahomes outsold a Tom Brady for all-time sales gives me that advantage, like automatically. That as opposed to McDavid, I think his highest card sale was 135,000 versus the 3.75 million in the Gretzky, right? So for me, I feel like the Mahomes, I think the Mahomes is going to be a lot easier to catch up to Brady. I don't think it's going to happen just in general, just for both, because they still have a long ways. But I think because the Mahomes already outsold Brady in terms of the highest card value, I think it only makes sense that I see that trend continuing, with Mahomes. So I'm going to pick Mahomes, likely to do that over McDavid.
I should have done my research before I picked this one. If that never happened, you still pick Mahomes?
That's why it was very tough. That's just one sale, right? Because it was like a RPA, right? So it's like I don't really necessarily count RPAs, one of ones, or special sales, because I think your point was rookie cards. Right. So I just took like the base.
Right. In general,
average. Base in general, exactly. Yeah. I'm just using that as a reference point. Yeah.
Sure. Makes sense still. John?
Man, I'm really messed up right now because I think I looked at this 1v1 in the way that Clark wanted us to look at it, in that, do we feel that Patrick Mahomes is going to be a bigger GOAT than Tom Brady versus McDavid being a bigger GOAT than Wayne Gretzky? That's the way I was looking at it. But then the moment Hyung talked about actual rookie card prices, I was like, dang, he's right. I was like, oh shoot. Man, you know what? I'm gonna stick with my original thought of, I don't think neither of these is gonna happen. This is like the hottest of takes.
I want to get hot tonight. All right. Let's go.
But as much as I love Wayne Gretzky, I think Tom Brady's status, his GOAT status, is just, you can't get there. I don't think anybody is going to get to his status in our lifetime, no matter how good Patrick Mahomes is. I could maybe say the same about Gretzky. But in the two completely unlikelihoods, because Tom Brady's status and where he is and his championships and all of that jazz, it's just too unattainable. I'm going to go the other side and pick Connor McDavid will surpass Wayne Gretzky rookie cards. And I'm seeing it more from a player versus player perspective rather than technically like the actual values of cards. Because if you think about Connor McDavid RPA versus like a $4 million Wayne Gretzky PSA 10, probably not going to happen. But yeah, from a player versus player perspective, I'm going to go with McDavid over Gretzky.
Okay.
Which even sounds silly that I'm saying that, but
yeah, I guess this was more of a difficult one because it's how you frame the question, right? But yeah, if you think about it, on average, Patrick Mahomes rookie cards versus Tom Brady rookie cards, and you eliminate all the outliers like the RPAs and whatnot, and the same thing with the McDavid rookie cards, like Young Guns, for example, versus I guess Gretzky tops, as a benchmark. Right. Because I put this out because I was debating back and forth myself, but I think I'm gonna go with Mahomes rookie cards will surpass Tom Brady. And I get it, Brady's a legend, like he'll always be a legend, but I think with if you look at the achievements that Mahomes is going to do, and it's already done. Super Bowl, and just the way he's probably going to win a Super Bowl again this year. And, with a subpar defensive team, you know what I mean? If the Chiefs get even better next season, they're already probably favorites to win. If any QB is likely to overtake Brady during their length of their career, I probably would put Mahomes there. And if I did the same test with McDavid, like the Oilers are just a mess, right? Like they can't do anything right. It seems even with the talent that they have. And, McDavid obviously is the best player in the league, but, will not winning a Stanley Cup impact his prices? Maybe. I don't, right now I can't foresee the Oilers making a big change unless McDavid goes to another team, and I can't even picture that either right now. So, for those reasons, I'm going with Mahomes. Like, I think at the end of the day, everyone stays healthy. He might, compete for Brady's records, and then I think card price values will follow. So, hot takes.
Love it.
All right, so we got one sweep out of this week's pick one hot takes, but I feel like it's always getting more difficult week after week. All right, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Cards to the Moon. Again, if you have any feedback, good or constructive, we'd love to hear it. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Cards to the Moon and DM us there if you like. All right, thanks again, and we'll see everyone next week. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.